Okay, Bob, you're good to go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Can we have a little bit smaller class because this overlaps with the Rick Steves Get Set Up broadcast that starts at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay.
Where are you located?
I'm actually in the Philippines.
Oh, great, great. Well, welcome to Get Set Up. If you haven't been in my meet classes before, welcome.
Thank you. I was actually in your class like last week, I think.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yes, but I just observed. I was not a TA at that time.
okay, great, great.
Yes.
Mm. Well, we'll give people a few minutes to come in. I know we're streaming live. So as people join in, we're going to talk about live or retire abroad, which is primarily focused on people in the United States and Canada, but can be of interest for other people too. So we'll remember to record, remind me to record. If I don't start recording, after people join, remind me to. If I forget, I've got a little record button on my post-it note on my screen monitor to help me understand, to remind me.
Okay.
Sure. And after people join the meeting, posting in chat, they can see chat. They can't go back and see chat after they've joined, that was posted before they joined the meeting. So that's something I learned about Zoom the other day.
Okay.
So have you been in other meetings today so far?
Yes, this is actually my third class. I was with Scott earlier, around 1 p.m. on his class.
I'm sorry, what did Scott do?
That was photo editing.
Oh,
It's a
great.
photo editing class.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Good. I do a little bit of photo editing myself. I love travel and taking travel photography. I just haven't been able to travel much this past year.
Oh, okay.
So
It's
I'm
for me.
saving up a
Yes.
lot of money. I have a son and daughter-in-law and granddaughter that live in Barcelona in
Oh,
Spain. And normally I'd be visiting them a couple of times during the year, but I haven't had a chance to.
there's COVID, so a lot of restrictions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's start letting people in. If they come in and I don't admit them, go ahead and let them in. Hello, Mara. Is it? Hi, how are you? We've got a small group today, so we'll be able to handle a lot of questions. It's late in the day, I know, for a lot of people. Who's anybody in Pacific time zone? I'm in Seal Beach, California, so I'm on Pacific time. It's only 4:30 for me, so it might be 7:30 for some other people earlier. Hi, Adrienne, how are you?
Oh, by the way, Bob, since it's 7:30 already, so you can press the record button.
Okay, okay. Sene, hello, how are you? And we've also have at 5 o'clock today, 5 p.m. Pacific time, there's Rick Steves Get Set Up special that's being done, and so I'm kind of surprised they had me handle this class that overlapped. So, but anyway, we've got a nice group today. So I want you to let me know what prompted you to think about living or retiring abroad, and if you've got a favorite place you're thinking about wanting to go. I haven't been everywhere, but I've been a lot of places. Okay, so we'll get a chance to share some of that information after I go through a few introductory slides. Okay. Okay, so this is about live or retire abroad. Is it right for you? And hopefully we'll cover a few things. A little bit about me. I'm in Seal Beach, California, and out here, I'm going to put somebody on. We have a little bit of a scratchy microphone from someone, so I'm going to put people on mute unless they have a question. I was born in Chicago. I went to college, stayed on the West Coast, worked in the tech industry, owned my own internet service, and I'll tell you a little bit about what got me into living abroad for a while. I have been teaching people about technology for quite a long time, and so I just decided to do it. And I've been doing it for Get Set Up since about January, and but I've been doing it since 2007. We're learning from each other. Some people have suggestions that they want to make during class. Please feel free. We have a small group today, so it's easier to manage. You can request a recording, which reminds me I need to record to the cloud. Okay, and then if you're joining by live stream, I don't know if we're live stream, but if you are, feel free to come join us at GetSetUp.io, register for a class. We're not paid to promote any specific products. I'm going to be mentioning some websites and resources that are there, and I'll include some things in the class notes. And they're just things that have helped me learn a little bit more about things. So this is a kind of an introduction to living or retiring abroad. We talk about some of the pros and cons. What are some good destinations and why, some of the essentials of costs and healthcare and visas, a little bit, some of the basics. There are some other follow-on classes I do that focus on finances and costs and ways to make money while you're living abroad, or healthcare and culture and other aspects of it. But we'll touch a little bit on all of these topics today. And we'll talk about planning and preparation. So it got me interested. I had met my wife, my late wife, when I came to college out in California in the late 60s, when I started to go to college, and I'd met her. We stayed together for like 40 years, and then she passed away about 8 years ago. And I started to adapt and kind of figure out what was I going to do with myself as a widower. And I didn't change anything for a year. And then about 2 years after she was gone, I read this article about here's 10 countries in the world you can live in really comfortably, $1,500 a month. Okay. And so I said, I got to check that out. And so I started making plans to travel. A couple of my friends went with me on visits to some of these countries. And I took a different approach to visits. Rather than just going as a tourist on a vacation, I would go and talk to, try and investigate what it would be like to live there and meet up with expats, other Americans that live there, and talked to real estate agents and checked out hospitals and communities and things like that. And I also, one of my sons, I have 3 boys, and my middle son was a world traveler. He loved to travel the world. He spent most of his college years studying abroad, and went to work for a company in Stockholm as part of his career, and then transferred to Barcelona, and then started his own company in Europe. And now they have like 50 employees, and they have offices in Spain and Krakow and Malta and a few other places. So I said, well, if he can figure it out, I can figure it out, right? So maybe there's a way to do it. And then when I started to think about retiring, I thought, well, let me start doing some exploring before I retire, and then I'll have an idea what I want to do. So this is a good time to open up for general questions. If people have a specific area in the world they're thinking of going to, let me know, and I'll show you some of the resources that I've found on the web that help make it a little more research. I don't know if anybody's researched anything in particular. Anybody done any research so far on living abroad at all? Or is it new for everybody? Mara, how about yourself? Is it Mara Sargent or
It's
Mara?
Mara. Yeah, I was just down in Cabo the last week of March, just a few weeks ago, and looked at some property and different communities down there to see which one resonated with me. So yeah, just starting the process.
Okay. Adrienne, you said your girlfriend is got a house or getting a house in Ghana. Okay. Laura, any place that you're thinking about going?
No, I'm the proud mother of Mara. And I told her about this amazing website. And so that's why she's joining me. And I'm all excited about it because I go into other classes and they talk about their grandchildren and doing things with them. And here I am doing things with my daughter.
Oh, great. Fantastic. And Sene, is it Sene, or am I pronouncing that right?
That's right. I'd like to go back to Senegal. I live in France now.
Interesting countries. Okay. Well, I mean, I haven't lived everywhere, and there's no bad country to go live in. It's just a matter of what fits you. And that's one of the challenges, is figuring out what's the right fit for you. So let me share a little bit of information about what I've learned, and we can see what might make sense. Yeah, I've lived abroad, and I've talked to a lot of expats that have lived abroad, and there are some really good sides to it. If you go to the right place, you can improve your standard of living. Okay, but it depends. Some places are more expensive than others. Okay. Maybe you want a better climate. I grew up in Chicago, but I live in Southern California right now, and I like road cycling a lot. I do about 2 rides a week. One's about a 15-mile, the other's about a 35-mile ride with a group. And so I like to look for a place where I can do bike riding. I've ridden in Spain, I've ridden in Panama, I've ridden in Thailand, and each place has its pros and cons for those kinds of interests. Some people want to retire early, okay, and they're looking at moving abroad as a way to retire early and get out of an expensive area to live in. Some people just find the foreign culture more interesting and fun. Some people do it for a sense of adventure. Some people just like to make new friends. Expats are generally pretty sociable. I made friends with people from Great Britain, from Denmark, from Norway, from Tokyo. Some of us even spoke the same language, and some of us relied on translation apps to communicate, but we keep in touch. Sao Paulo, Brazil. I met a doctor from there while I was in Thailand. I met an Englishman while I was in Norway. So if you are approachable and you talk to people, it's interesting what you can find out making new friends. And some people just prefer a different lifestyle. Maybe you're living in an inland area and you'd rather be by the beach, so or maybe you're by the beach and you'd rather be up in the mountains. There's lots of choices. Or maybe you'd like to be in a city and you're in the country right now. So there's lots of different choices. There are some downsides to it, okay? So affordability depends on the location. I mean, when I was in Norway in 2009, I visited there again, but when I was there in 2009, a bottle of water at a roadside convenience store cost $7. Okay, for just a standard, bottle of water. So some places can be expensive. Other places, I've eaten lunch in Thailand and in Medellin, Colombia for like $1.50. So it's just a matter of where you go and also how you deal with things in terms of going. You might be further away from family and friends than you are used to. So if you aren't used to being far away from them, it can be a challenge, but depends on how easily you make new friends or what kind of family you have. I have a son and daughter-in-law and granddaughter that live in Barcelona, and I'm kind of waiting, until Spain will let U.S. travelers back in to go back and stay with them, because I can stay for a couple of months. Okay, travel time to the U.S. is a factor. How often do you have to come back? How frequently, and how long is it going to take? If you're looking for work overseas, wages are at a local pay scale. You might have some language barriers that you've got to deal with. You might have some paperwork that you've got to be patient with in terms of getting visas. And if you're looking for assisted living help, there's limited options. It's not as common overseas to have assisted living facilities. Multi-generational family living tends to be the standard for most types of situations, but that can be some drawbacks to living abroad. Any questions so far? Kind of what you expected, to learn? Okay. These are the factors, the features that make a good destination. Like I say, there's no one country that's better or worse for things, but if you look at the majority of Americans and that go and live abroad, there are a couple of common factors. Housing, is it up to the standards you want? Depending on what you want. Some people are very comfortable living in different types of housing standards, but having a variety is available. How's the climate? Little things like you might not think about how much it rains in some parts of the world as a climate factor, but it can be. Healthcare, is it available? Quality. Visa and residency, is it easy to get? What's the cost of living if you're trying to match or actually do better than what you are spending now? Can you get money in and out? Is there an expat community? What lifestyle choices are there? Is there a good infrastructure like internet, roads, taxis, buses, airports, things like that? And is it a stable and safe country to go to? So the couple of publications that publish information and top 10 lists, International Living and Live and Invest Overseas, they weigh all these factors and they come up with lists every year. Okay. And one of the lists is on the International Livings and the other is Live and Invest Overseas. They both have some things they share commonly, but they also have some things that they are a little bit different on. But I'm beginning to think that that both publications are owned by the same company because they look very similar to each other, and I'll show you the sites. But they kind of have their lists of what they come up with every year. Costa Rica, Panama, Mexico, Colombia, some Latin American countries, and Mexico is actually still the #1 expat destination for Americans. It's estimated as many as 2 million Americans live in Mexico. But Colombia for Europe, Portugal, France, you don't see Spain, but Spain goes up and down. France goes up and down. Malta, Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand goes up and down. So you find a lot of countries that keep on making the list over and over again. Part of it's because they are easy to get into. They do make it friendly for expats to stay there and get visas, and they're popular with people because of those reasons. Now, it doesn't mean that there's other countries that aren't like Belize, which is here in Live and Invest Overseas. It's popular because it's a former British colony and English is the national language. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these sites and I'll show you a way around. The good thing is they're good starting places. So if you haven't looked at them before, consider them as options, at least to start your exploration. So Live and Invest Overseas, they're going to have pop-up ads that are going to ask you to sign up for their email list. But the biggest thing on them is the countries, okay? Top 10 destinations, and you can see what they are, and you can browse a lot of countries. And then they have a best for investing in real estate, best for single women, and Live and Invest Overseas seems to have a little more subcategories like this. It's not that International Living doesn't have them, but they just break it up. But if we look at the countries list and take a look, they'll send you free reports. They want you to take a look at everything so you can read more about Portugal and where in Portugal people retire and why people like it. Now, one caution on both of these websites is that everybody's delightfully happy. It's like a Disney movie, they're all thrilled, they're all happy, they all are so glad they did it, they wish they had done it earlier, and you don't hear any of the negative side of it. Now, it's not for everybody. I have a friend that gives expat tours, people who say they want to go visit and live in Latin America, and he says about half the people that come back from his tours decide it's not really what they want to do after all. But that's okay. I mean, it's okay to if that's not the right thing. International Living, here's again another ad that pops up at their websites, but they are a good place to start. I subscribed to them for the first couple of years when I was thinking about where to go. They've got information on real estate. Now, keep in mind they do have relationships with real estate partners where they may get a commission from promoting a certain real estate, but they have great country reports as well. So if you take a look at Mexico, they've got all types of things. They have information. They have correspondence, again, pop-up ads that will pop up all the time, and they'll talk about different aspects of what you will find out in it. So they'll give you a lot of great information on them as well. So they're just two good websites to start off, and they will have lots of information. They may not do your country because it's a very small group of people that might be interested in traveling or living there, but they do have a lot of information on all these sites. So they were my starting point for resources when I first started looking into that. And if you're not familiar with them, take advantage of them. Anybody looked at them before, to start to look at things? Okay. So there's a couple of other resources. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about stability and safety. It has to do with the stability of the government, the presence or relevance of crime. Now, there's always some tourist crime in every area where you have expats and tourism. You're going to have tourism crime. It's property crime typically, but the thing people are more concerned about is violent crime, and that's relatively mild. But there are some areas of the world that you just don't want to go to, and the U.S. Department of State is probably the best resource for Americans to go to and check out what's going on. From a stability safety standpoint, the legal systems are different in other parts of the world. And so as a non-citizen, you have to be aware that your legal rights are going to be different than those of a citizen, particularly when it comes to doing things like buying property. So that your contracts and your others are there too. I'm going to share the website, Adrienne, for the friend that gives, and there's a couple of others out there as well. Okay, so, but yeah, you just want to be aware of the fact that legal issues. So when foreigners do business in the United States or are trying to get help with visas or other things, they typically hire a local immigration attorney. You may want to find a local immigration attorney when you travel and start thinking about going to another country. Some countries, not too many, but some countries do give out dual citizenship. They'll let you as an American get a passport in that country. Others do not, but the countries that are on these lists do make it easy for people to get longer term visas there as well. We'll talk a little bit about that. Okay. Questions about that? Okay. Okay. From a healthcare standpoint, for those of you on Medicare, your Medicare benefits stop when you cross the US border into another country. Medicare does not exist as insurance when you travel to another country. You might have a Medigap or a Medicare Advantage plan, and that gives you the ability to travel on vacation. So US insurance companies, on your insurance ID card on the back, there's a number to call, and call that number in advance. Do some research on what are your medical benefits when you travel overseas. What does it include? Does it include access to doctors, access to hospitals? For how long will that insurance be effective? Maybe it's only going to be effective for 30 days of travel. So in which case, if you're planning on staying somewhere for more than 30 days or traveling for more than 30 days, you might need to get some supplemental insurance. There are some international insurance agencies. One of the things that as expats, we can take advantage of is the fact that the world is a global industry. So if you're traveling around the world, and businesses do all over the world, they send people overseas to work all the time. And so they're used to getting insurance for their foreign, their employees that travel abroad, live abroad, reside abroad, whether it's London or Ghana or Mexico or Thailand or wherever. And so the major companies like Cigna and Aetna and others like Geo Blue provide add-on insurance policies. So one of the policies that I used when I was exploring, and I would spend several months on the road, is I used a policy from a company called Geo Blue. And I'm going to bring their website up here at the same time, okay, as I've got this. Let's see if this works, if I can do both at the same time. No, it doesn't seem to want to work. Okay, so Geo Blue, and you'll get the link in the email, but I'll post it in chat as well for you. They're one of the websites. They offer plans for travel and medical and international health insurance. So maybe you're just taking a 2-week trip, or maybe you're taking multiple trips, or maybe you're looking at long term. And they base it on your current age, but where you're going to, because costs are very different in other parts of the world for healthcare and medical insurance. The policy I had was a supplemental policy that cost me about $300 a year. And what it did was it covered me for up to 180 days of travel anywhere in the world. And so I got an ID card, I got a website and an app on my phone that gave me access to 24-hour assistance, directory of English-speaking medical care facilities, doctors, hospitals, everything, and they'll do that. Now, the thing about these international healthcare providers is they've contracted with international providers overseas to accept their insurance. Sometimes if you just get like travel insurance, it's a different experience because maybe they've contracted with somebody or maybe they haven't. But these companies like Geo Blue, they deal with international health insurance. So they give you the ability to make sure your appointments are cashless. Now, quality and availability is pretty good around the world. That's the thing. So let's see. So Adrian said, if you have Blue Cross Blue Shield, your private insurance will cover you as a vacationer as you vacation travel. But check with them to find out how long they will cover you for and whether they provide access to international, healthcare facilities where you won't have to pay cash for something. Or most places around the world will take cash or credit cards for payment. And costs are very different. You might see a doctor in Brazil, for example, and it might cost $10. And so getting a CAT scan might be $150. So costs are very different around the world, which is one reason why your healthcare policies are very different as well. But check if you are whatever your private insurance you have, but you can also get a policy that is based in another country, like a policy based in Mexico, or a policy based in Spain, or a policy based in Senegal or Ghana, wherever you want to be. And those prices will be based on the fact that you are going to be living there. And you might travel outside, but that's what your cost basis is going to be based on. So any questions about healthcare and other issues? But check and make sure you find out. Now, one of the things that I did as kind of a way to explore countries is I would visit as a tourist. I'd stay in a hotel, but I would make it a point to visit a realtor, and I would make it a point to ask the staff at the hotel for a tour guide that would be familiar with where Americans lived in the area I was visiting. And so they would help out. That would be kind of my first exploratory visit. And then on my second visit, if I liked the location, my second visit, I would take classes at a school. I found language schools and language school instructors to be really, really excellent resources for getting to know an area locally. First of all, you're learning the language. And when you learn the language, you learn a little bit about the culture as well. And that helps getting you familiar with people. And they're going to, if you ask them, hey, do you know an immigration attorney that can help me get a visa? Do you know a realtor? Whatever, they'll guide you along the way. And because once you know somebody that lives overseas, they seem to have connections that will get you connected up. And that helped me get established. Okay, so your costs, you can really live somewhere for about 15 or I'm going to go one slide forward here. This is a budget from a family, a couple in Ecuador. They paid $500 a month for an apartment. Their electricity, water, trash, utilities were cheap. They didn't have a car, and I recommend if you can get by without a car, life is a lot easier. And things like groceries and food just depends on what you want to eat. And then house cleaning services, you really can live very comfortably for $1,500 a month in a lot of places. Now, this doesn't include your travel to and from the US. Don't forget the budget for that as well. So a couple of things that you're going to be looking at is, one is, where do you get money to and from? First of all, check your credit cards and your ATM cards to see whether or not they charge you an exchange fee. Whenever you're moving currency from dollars to a foreign currency, there's a commission that banks and finance companies charge called an exchange fee. And that will take a little percentage of your money. Some credit cards and some ATM cards, like the one from Schwab that I have, doesn't charge an exchange fee. Someone told me that Apple's credit card doesn't charge an exchange fee. So check with your card provider to make sure, because if you can avoid burning up money in that exchange fee, it helps. The other thing is that there's a website called Xoom that's owned by PayPal, Xoom with an X. It's a money transfer service. It connects to your PayPal account, and it allows you to send money, from your US bank account to your overseas account if you need. But rarely do you really need an overseas bank account, because if you have to pay somebody, You can typically pay them with a credit card. If you have to move money and send money for like rent to a bank account, Zoom can do a direct deposit to a bank account for you in just a few, in like 24 to 48 hours. And so it's rare that you really need to have a local bank account for anything these days. If any income you make in the US is going to get deposited in your US bank, and you are going to pay US taxes on it. Okay, a resource to find out what things cost. Again, we take advantage of foreign, business travel. There are websites like Expatistan that give you a really good guideline on what things really cost. So let's take a look, and then I'm going to show you a little video here. Okay, let me go to my website. And Expatistan is a website that people just basically contribute to and provide. And they've got a cost of living ranking and comparison. So they get contributions from people. So if I go to city rankings around the world, has a map that shows you what's in red is the most expensive and what's in green is the least expensive. So if I can go down this list, and they give it an index for every location, and they have information on housing. If you look at, say, Washington, D.C., it's 207, Los Angeles, 196. Let's scroll down this list a little more to something like San Salvador or Manila or Quito, Ecuador. Okay, Quito, Ecuador is not a bad one to look at to show you. Now, I have the currency in dollars, so it tells you what's a lunchtime menu, including a drink in the business district, going to cost you $10. A combo meal like a McDonald's, they're pretty much the same all over the world. But I found that when I was in Thailand, for example, I ate in the hotel, which was pricey for Thailand, but then I watched the staff and I watched what door they went out to during lunchtime, and I followed them, and I found the street behind the hotel were a bunch of vendors set up with street carts, and I ate for $1.50, right? So it's just a matter of, and that included a can of Coke, right? So I'll show you housing, where it is in an expensive area. This is really the top end. This is the Beverly Hills areas of the cities, but in a moderate area, probably where you'd be perfectly comfortable and where a lot of expats live. And then they show you utilities. Most places are furnished. It's very easy to find furnished homes, furnished apartments for rent overseas compared to America. They do have some in the Los Angeles area where I live. We get a lot of people that come in for movie and TV production. And so there are a lot of furnished places available, but they're expensive. Clothing, blue jeans are expensive. They're more expensive outside of the United States than they are in. Transportation, taxi trips, personal care items. So this is a really good website, to get comparisons wherever you're thinking of looking. And you can look in different cities, you can find different countries, and it's a really good resource to start looking at for comparisons. Now, one of the things that's also really helpful is there's usually a Facebook group for people that live overseas as well. And so joining a Facebook group will help you. Now, one of my favorite channels on YouTube is by a young couple that left Phoenix, Arizona, and relocated to Mexico because they wanted to live better. And they support themselves with their YouTube channel. Not everybody can do that, but I'm going to get this set up to play and show you about 5 or 6 minutes of what they say it costs them to live in Mexico. They've been in Mexico now for 3 years. And so they've done a really good job of getting information on it. So let me set this up for video sharing here. and play a little bit of the video for you. There we go. And now I should be able to share it. Just a second here. Okay, let me enlarge that to full screen and play it.
Today we are tackling a
Oh, can you hear okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right.
topic. It's a lot of T's.
Tangerine
Tangerine
Travels,
tackling a topic. One of the most common questions we get asked on our channel is, what is the cost of living in Mexico, our cost of living? And before we dive in, we want to give a little disclaimer, if you will. We realize that it's super general to say, what is our cost of living in Mexico? Mexico is a huge country, but we do feel like we have a pretty unique perspective on this topic because we've been to 39 cities across the country over the course of 16 months. Also, if you're not familiar, we are currently living in Puerto Morelos, which is a small beach town in the state of Quintana Roo between Cancun and Playa del Carmen. So a lot of these costs are going to be very specific to this town. Oh, and in case you notice this snazzy Alaska shirt that I'm wearing. This and other designs are finally ready at tangerinetravels.com. And I hope you're saying finally, because we've been telling you about these t-shirts for, I don't know, a year now, and we got our act together and they are there. tangerinetravels.com.
To start off, we have our rent.
We recently moved into a new place that is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment, and we are paying,
$500 US a month.
that includes water and internet. If those were not included in our price, what seems to be an average water bill, at least in this area, is about 130 to 160 pesos, depending on water usage.
And for internet, our landlord is paying 500 pesos a month. We've seen internet vary from about 200 on the low end to 500 on the high end. Next is electricity. In all the rentals we've had throughout Mexico, this is the first one where we are the ones responsible for paying the electric. And that's because we haven't had air conditioning until now. And if you don't have air conditioning, your electric bill is probably going to be dirt cheap.
A few things to note on the electricity front. It works a little differently here than it does in the US, at least in my experience. We're only paying every 2 months instead of monthly is what I'm used to in the US. And also there's tier pricing. So if you hit a certain kilowatt usage, the price per kilowatt goes way up. And then at another tier, it goes up even more than that. So it behooves you to conserve electricity and like not blast your air conditioning.
Yeah.
From what we were told in Ajijic. Do you want to explain that?
If you reach one of those higher tiers, it's pretty difficult to get back down to the lower tiers. You have to show a low usage for quite a few months in order for them to drop you back down. So you can either literally have a bill that's like $2, or you could have one that's hundreds of dollars depending on your usage. We have not personally got our first electric bill, but after talking to a neighbor and his experience in town, we're estimating an average bill throughout the cold season and hot season being about $75 US a month with air conditioning.
Something else not included in our rent is gas. And gas is used for hot water, the stove. If we had a washer and dryer, it might be used for that as well. And this last time we filled up with 1,000 pesos for like what I think is an average sized tank. And depending on usage, it could last 3 to 6 months. We cook a lot, so I imagine it's probably going to be about 3 months that it'll last. And so that averages out to $17.47 per month. The next section is food. And we've broken this down into a bunch of different categories: groceries, eating out at restaurants, drinking out at restaurants, drinking water, filtered water for at home, and
Costco membership. Starting with the Costco membership, we buy a lot of our groceries there, and it's a little over $2 a month. And it's much cheaper in Mexico than it is in the US.
however, there's no Costco gas, and that's a feature I really liked in the US, cheap gas at Costco. The next one is drinking water, and that's us going to like Oxxo or the grocery store and getting those big garrafones of water refilled with purified water, and that averages out to about $6.71 a month.
The first time you buy those, you have to pay a deposit for the plastic bottle itself, but every time after that, it's going to be much cheaper, and it's just the refill cost.
Something like 30 pesos or so. The next categories: groceries, eating out, and drinking aloud. Drinking aloud and drinking out. Those fluctuate so much for us. Some months we're basically cooking all at home. Other months we're going out, and it also depends on the city. So we've tried our best to do some averages here of what we've done across the span of 16 months.
For eating out, we fall typically in between the range of $100 and $500 a month. It's a really wide range, totally depending on how much we cook at home.
And we separated out going out for drinks, and we think that averages around $70 a month. Then moving on to groceries, of course, this is another category that could just be all over the place. If we're going to local produce markets, that's only about 100 pesos for a week's worth of produce. Crazy
Dirt
cheap.
cheap.
Whereas if we're going to a store like Chedraui or Costco for more things like, I don't know, milk, Greek yogurt, gluten-free pancake mix, you
We just
decide to
bought
get,
that.
it'll be much higher. The average of both of those two, we'd say, is around 62.88 per month.
Next is our cell phone bill. Before coming to Mexico, we had T-Mobile, and they actually have a really good plan for Mexico. It's probably the best plan you can have for someone visiting. For the two of us, it was $100 US a month. But now we switched to Telcel after a few months in Mexico, and that dropped to a little over $31.
Granted, it's not unlimited data anymore, but it's so inexpensive to buy more. We usually get the 300 peso paquete, and that has
2.5 gigabytes of data, but a lot of times we're running promotion where you get 5 gigabytes.
So if we ever need more, we just pay 100 pesos, 200 pesos to get more data, no big deal. Still much cheaper than we were paying before. Moving on to car insurance, we actually need insurance both in the US.
Okay, I just wanted to share a little bit of that with you so you can get an idea of a different age perspective on traveling and living abroad. They've got a lot of good videos that are available. They talk, one of the most recent one they did on their channel was what things they wish they had done before they moved to Mexico. And they talked about two things. One is learning the language. Would have been a big advantage for them if they knew more of the language, because when you deal in the local language, you get better deals, you have better opportunities to shop and buy things no matter where you go. And the other was they wish they had spent more time getting rid of stuff. You know, if you're picking up and moving from one location to another, you've got stuff that you own, and you got to either put it in storage, or if you're going to hold on to your house, you're going to have two households that you're going to run in different places. So they had wished they sold their home, and I did too as well. And they wish they had gotten rid of more stuff before they went into that and tried to do that. But they're a good channel that's worth watching and helpful as well. They're renting, and they've rented the whole time they've been in Mexico. My middle son, Alex, who lives in Barcelona, he does pretty well income wise, and he is not planning on buying a house in Barcelona, even though he's been there a while, because he said their financing arrangements and their legal requirements are not as transparent and flexible as what it's like in the United States. And they'll find a lot of people encourage you to buy. I encourage you to rent for a while. And then once you say, this is a place I want to live for a while, buy it. Because I've just heard of so many people that have traveled abroad that have bought a place because they liked it and they thought this was going to be where they want to live. And then they said, gee, we wish we had bought somewhere else or waited, until we went around, because every part of the countries are different. One of the things that Mag mentioned on, that she didn't mention on this, but they talked about living by the coast. They're living by the coast in a subtropical, tropical climate. And those can be really, really humid. If you're not used to humid, hot weather, it can become oppressive. And so people go up into the hills and the mountains because they find that it's much cooler. Like in Medellin, Colombia, It was 61 in the morning and 85 at the middle of the day, every day of the year, because it's by the equator, but it's 7,000 feet up in altitude. If you go down to Cartagena on the coast, it's going to be 90 degrees most of the time, and about 90% humidity. It's great if all you're doing it is at the beach, but if you want to kind of work or enjoy things or travel, different types of things, that humidity can be oppressive. And so be careful of that when you learn. And you're also going to get a lot of rain at different times. Unless you live somewhere for a year, you don't know what the rainy pattern is in terms of humidity and climate and rain. And I'm not used to a lot of rain in California. I found rain very annoying in some of the places I lived in. Okay, so visas and residency. If your passport will typically let you stay somewhere for 90 days. After 90 days, you're going to need some kind of a visa. The countries like Mexico, Panama, Spain, Portugal that are on these lists, they have easier processes to get to a longer stay visa. But you might need some help doing the paperwork. It might cost $400 or $500 to get a local immigration attorney to help you out with that. But if you're planning on staying somewhere for more than 90 days, you're going to need a visa that gives you the ability to stay there. And if you have income that you can prove, but you also might need some medical certifications. Usually you need a letter from a doctor to show you're in good health. These days with COVID, things are all over the place with COVID. So every country's a little bit different, but you can get a longer stay visa that's typically renewable for 3 years to 5 years within many countries. As long as you show you're not going to be a burden financially on them, it's going to work out. This is an apartment I lived in Medellin, Colombia. I lived there for a year. I lived in Barcelona for a year, stayed in Thailand for about 6 months. You can find very comfortable, up-to-date Western style accommodations furnished, for reasonable prices. And if you're willing to go into some of the more local neighborhoods, your prices will drop. A friend of mine works in the satellite industry, and we went down to Rio de Janeiro about a year ago before the pandemic closed things down. And his company has an office in Rio. So we had some connections locally. He knew other employees that work there. And we said, well, the tourist area where people want to be by the beaches is real popular and prices are higher. But we say, well, where do, his co-employees, his counterparts had good jobs in Rio. They were good paying jobs. And we asked where they lived, and they were living in apartments that cost like $350 a month. And they just lived close where they could walk to work. And so, it's just as if you get to know local people, you'll learn a lot more about the local environment as you stay there, and you'll learn pros and cons about different areas and different aspects of things. Maybe you want a house versus an apartment. I personally just preferred a walking neighborhood because that was more comfortable for me. I kind of discovered that when I stayed in Barcelona, and I could take the elevator down from my 4th floor apartment, and I could walk to a coffee shop. I could walk to a butcher. I could walk to a produce market. I could walk to a metro stop for the subway. And I just found it delightful to be able to just have a lot of things within a mile walk of where I lived and not have to really worry about traveling too far if I didn't want to. And if I wanted to take a trip to the country, I'd rent a car. Parking becomes a problem lots of times in other places because a lot of cities weren't designed for cars. But as you get into the countryside, the more you're in by the beach, the city, in the mountains, you're going to need some things. And you can live in an expat community where you're surrounded mostly by expats, if it's a popular destination, or you can live more around locals and be part of a local community. And you'll find a mix in a lot of areas. But just keep in mind the infrastructure. I love taking the bus in Costa Rica because it cost me 25 cents, for a bus ride. And it was just fun. I was the only gringo on the ride, but I didn't mind it. I didn't feel self-conscious. It was just easier to take. But Uber's everywhere, Lyft is everywhere. And if you're thinking about being someplace, like one of the great things about when I was in Barcelona is I could take a weekend trip to Paris for $150 for airfare. And I could take a trip when I was in Bangkok to go to Hong Kong for just a low airfare as well. So you can do these jumping off trips, but build it into your budget. And I went through an exercise when I was getting ready to sell my house. I went to IKEA a lot. And every time I looked at apartments, I tried to figure out how much room do I really need to live in. And I went to IKEA because they have these rooms set up. This is what you can live in 350 square feet. This is what 450 will do for you. And oh, well, you can live, you just don't have to have a lot of stuff, And so there's people that live in RVs all year long. And the RV community has really done a lot for people, for expats, because they have resources that let you set up a mail center. A lot of mail centers, mail services will accept your mail, scan it, email you the scanned copy, and then open up whatever you need opened up and forward all things, but get everything set up electronically that you can, and learn to use a scanning app for scanning documentation. Get all your, get your past 5, 6, or 7 years of tax returns electronically from your tax preparer and save them in the cloud. Learn to use the cloud a lot. It will make life a lot easier. This is the tour company called Elite Tours Abroad that gives tours. They'll be in the email. I know somebody asked for that link, and they're nice. It's a nice group. He's a retired attorney. Well, he retired from an attorney, but he still does tours abroad. There's another one that one of our students was on called Panama Tours. They advertise, all of them advertise on international living, so that you can find others as well. But they typically focus on Americans going to Central or Latin America. Panama's a popular destination because they give a lot of financial advantages to people that live there. They have discount programs for expats. But most people in Panama retire in the northern part of Panama, close to the Costa Rican border. They don't retire in Panama City. So if you're looking for an urban city environment to retire in, Panama is not necessarily the best place to do it. Talk to expats, visit the expat website communities, do some research, explore. Once you live somewhere, the first 30 days are typically the hardest because you may not know a lot of people, you're not familiar with the language. And that's why I liked language goals. I ran across a Canadian that was flying into Chiang Mai, Thailand while I was living there. And I met her at the airport on one of my flights, and we shared a taxi into town. And she said she was there for a 3-week cooking class. What a great idea, to keep yourself occupied in visiting a country. And the cooking class didn't take all day. It was like a morning, or an afternoon. And they also helped arrange outings and things like that were helpful too. So it's just learning, taking classes, participate. I took a bike ride in Spain for a week and went out to the countryside. We went up to the Pyrenees, and you got to know the people that are with the tour, and can ask them about places to live and things to do and how it's different in different parts of the country as well. So we take a look at pros and cons, basics of finance, what to expect. Let's see, anybody have any questions about living or retiring abroad? That hopefully some of these, you're going to get an email with all the links to all the websites that I've shown you that are for resources to follow up.
Yes,
So,
Bob.
yeah, Adrienne.
Yes, Sharon and I are going to Costa Rica for my 60th birthday in October. So we'll be able to try to get a feel for the area, the climate, And we're just trying to get a feel for that entire area. And I'll do what you suggested. Also, we'll call a travel agent.
Yeah, travel agents are great at arranging tours. Stop into a realtor's office when you go down there. Look up, you got Google Maps and Apple Maps. They work everywhere in the world. Find a realtor's office and make a stop in there and talk to them. And as you visit different parts of the country, you'll find things are a little bit different. 90% of the people in Costa Rica live in Sao Paulo. So it's a really, really congested city in some parts, but other parts are really nice. Costa Rican people are very willing to open. I stayed in a person's home in a bedroom that while I was taking Spanish lessons in Costa Rica for 2 weeks, and I learned my way around the city. You don't want to be downtown at night. You got to use common sense about a lot of things, but the countryside is very rural feeling. You get up into the coffee country. It's really an interesting feeling. And so just keep in mind that different parts of the country, even though it's a small country, it's really going to feel very different depending on where you are. But it's a great place to check out. Costa Rica's got a lot of flights, and they also use the U.S. Marines for their national defense force. So they have a close relationship with the United States too.
And Relda and she invited me to Panama last year, 2019. So she was there for the entire month of December. So I flew in, and then the four of us flew into Buquete on Christmas morning. So we got a good feel of Buquete and Panama City, and we met with the expats there. They have a brunch every Sunday at this local hotel. So It was nice to really link up with the expats that live in Panama.
Yeah, well, you sound like you're really good at exploring, so that's good. Mm-hmm. That's good. Yeah. Any other questions or anybody has to ask or want suggestions or anything? Okay, great. Well, I encourage you to travel and visit other places. You're going to get in my email that'll come out. There's a book. Part of living abroad or exploring what you're going to do with your life is how do you want to spend your time? You can't manufacture more time. You can make a lot of other things in the world, but you can't make more time. So once time is spent, it's hard to get it back. And so kind of exploring what you want to do with your life is really, really exciting and makes a lot of sense to do it. So I'm glad you're all taking advantage of that and trying things out. Couple of sites classes that are good, trips for traveling safely. You can explore a lot of things with websites. You can, get a lot of information. We do another class on Live or Retire Abroad that focuses strictly on finances and costs and ways to make money while you're living abroad, and some ideas that you can use. I do mostly technology classes, but because of my situation in life, I ended up living abroad. And one of the colleges I teach at told me, hey, we'd like you to do a class on this. And so hopefully you've got some new information and some other resources that maybe will help you on your journey as well. You're going to get the notes. You can request a recording at help@getsetup.io and help us. I've told a friend about Get Set Up, and she took like 60 classes her first month. We do have interest groups. There's actually a lot of people that are kind of interested in not only maybe living abroad, but spending extended travel abroad, like maybe living for 3 months in a place and then moving on to something else. So if you're interested in hosting an interest group, those are some things you can do as well. So before we say good night or good afternoon for anybody else have any questions or suggestions they want to offer or that might be helpful to people here.
I
just
only
have-
want to say for me, I'm not moving out of the States for a while, but my daughter, as I said, is thinking about it. And I think it's interesting and fantastic.
Yeah, it is. You can depending on your situation, it really fits. My son ended up meeting his wife in Europe, and they had a daughter there, and so it's just one thing that but he likes Barcelona a lot, and I do too. It's a great city to go stay with. Okay. Thank you. Okay, well, good luck, Mark.
Bob,
Yeah,
I
Adrian.
just have one quick question in the chat. The GeoBlue travel insurance.com, just click on that link, and then that would cover me for only $300 a year. That'll cover me for additional insurance for up to 180 days.
That's what I pay.
Very good.
Yes, yeah. So everybody's going to be a little bit different, depending on what your insurance plan is currently. It's a supplement, so their pricing is based on what you currently have. But if you have private insurance now, that their multi-trip insurance policy is what I took out, and then I ended up paying for a year's worth of insurance. My policy at the time, I was in my early 60s, it was about $300 a month for international insurance full time. But for the supplemental policy to my US based plan, that was only about, it was a little under $300 a year. That gave me up to 180 days of coverage and included $50,000 evacuation. Yeah. So sometimes you think you want to be evacuated to the United States, and if your insurance policy doesn't cover it, you're going to probably have to pay about $40,000 to $50,000 to get evacuated to the U.S. It's expensive. I used to work for a travel security firm that did that for people. But yeah, they're great at some, and the others give you supplemental. Cigna and Aetna do as well. But my choice ended up just being GeoBlue. Okay, all right. Well, thank you everyone for coming, and I hope you enjoyed. For those of you that your first Get Set Up site, for those of you that have had me as a guide, I hope you got what you wanted out of this, and let us know if you end up. Drop us a line at help@getsetup.io if you end up finding a place to relocate to. We'd love to hear about it. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.